There is within us both a beast and a higher man. But should we only cultivate the latter, or should we cultivate both of these? I'm author Angel Miller. Hit subscribe and like if you're interested in self-development, self-mastery, religion, spirituality, and discussing these from a non-cliched point of view. I recently came across a video on the werewolf cult by Arith Herga, and I'll post a link below. It's an excellent video. This video is really about the werewolf or the wolf warrior in Norse mythology. Most people will be aware of the berserker wearing the bear skin, going mad in battle, seemingly unstoppable, and sometimes literally going into a kind of mad frenzy, a kind of trance state while in battle, and as such being an incredibly ferocious opponent, sometimes awakening from battle from a kind of trance and discovering that they have all kinds of wounds that they hadn't realized that they had, sometimes even being almost crippled from battle without realizing it. So he's talking about this phenomenon of the beast within, which can come out in this warrior ethos in these particular moments of battle in ancient time. But one thing he mentions that I want to kind of clarify, and I should say that although it's certainly not a major part of his video, and you can't mention every single possibility, and there's always an exception to anything you say, so this is not criticizing him in any way. But he says at one point that the hardest thing for us is to subdue the beast within. And I think when you look at social media today and the internet, well, it's certainly true that the monster within is always being unleashed. The behavior online is frankly degenerate most of the time. You only have to look on most social media sites to see the worst examples of human degeneracy, of attacking people for no good reason, of deliberately misunderstanding what someone says so that they can be attacked, of taking things out of context, and so on and so forth. Absolutely repugnant behavior. And when we face this kind of a mob, it is extremely difficult to keep a lid on this monster within us. And whether we're in that mob or whether we're opposed to the mob, it seems that keeping this monster subdued is the most difficult thing for us to do. And even if we're against it, nevertheless, we often will take on board the worst characteristics of the mob to attack it. And so, of course, we have, particularly in politics today, both sides are attacking each other using the most underhand tactics, the dirtiest kind of behavior and slandering that we can see. And of course, both sides will justify by saying, well, they're doing it, so we have to do it. And you know, the end result is the ugliness in the world that we see around us, especially online. So that clearly is the hardest thing to subdue in a mob environment, to subdue the monster within us, and to remember the sort of higher man within us, to remember a kind of nobility of behavior. When everybody else is acting like a degenerate, it's very easy for us to slip into that and to forget who we are, to forget that we have higher standards than the mob. But in contrast, when we are alone, or when we have to take responsibility in a much more one-on-one situation, or a situation where it's us against the world, there are times in which the hardest thing for us to do is to kind of connect with our own inner beast, our own inner energy. In fact, at those times, it might be the easiest thing might be to subdue the monster, but what might be necessary might be to bring it out. And as someone who practices martial arts, I don't mind saying, or maybe I do a little bit, but I'll certainly acknowledge that there have been many, many times when I've been facing an opponent who I know has, say, 10 years more experience than me, is naturally aggressive, maybe even a little bit psychotic. And thrown into that, maybe even a friend of mine who I don't really want to hurt. But, in that situation, of course, you do have to try and get your energy up and your aggression up. And at a certain point, it's going to happen. But it's not something that comes naturally to, I would say, the majority of people in this day and age. And, male or female, there's a real passivity in the world. Just walking around New York City, there's this incredible energy in a modern city, of course. But you'll also notice that there's incredible passivity, where men, perhaps in particular, are walking around with their shoulders slumped, their heads are down, they're looking at the floor. They seem to have no direction. Their bodies seem to have no pride in them at all. And they almost seem like a different kind of human being to that you would see a few decades ago, or certainly 100 years ago, from what we know from photographs or from portraits, where people are standing erect or sitting upright. There's a certain pride in their posture. And yet today, there's this terrible sort of lethargy, this energy, this beast within, which, it might be true, should be the thing that we need to subdue, is the thing that we sometimes need to cultivate and sort of pull into our body and have a sense of energy. Now, I would say that the beast that we want to cultivate is not purely an energy, not purely an aggression towards someone. If there's going to be a confrontation where we might need to be aggressive, it's not simply that. That would be one manifestation. But I would say that the beast within is also things such as desire and imagination, which gives us that energy. And it seems to me that desire and imagination is also something that is on the wane in this last couple of decades. Very peculiarly, millennials are having less sex than generations before them. And I think this lack of energy, this lack of drive really is showing up in the body, in people in the modern environment. And so in contrast to the beast, you have the higher man, the noble, the person who has standards and higher standards. And both of these need to be cultivated. So if the beast is not only appropriate aggression, if you find yourself being confronted or attacked, but it's also, as I say, this desire, this energy, this imagination, that can kind of project us into the world. And in contrast, the higher man is what can mold this energy in a certain direction and kind of channel it in healthy directions. And so obviously in martial arts, you have this beast, this energy, and this is channeled perhaps through controlled sparring, or perhaps through physical training, or some other kind of aspect of the martial arts. And in other areas, it might be, let's say, painting, that the inner energy, the desire, the imagination might make you to paint something, and there's maybe something primal perhaps, and then the higher man might guide it in a certain sense, learning the techniques, subduing his own ego for a long period so he can learn to express what he desires in a way that is aesthetically beautiful, for example, and impactful on the world around it, and not merely throwing splashy colors onto a canvas. So really that's just what I wanted to talk about today, that the beast and the higher man. I always talk about the higher man when I speak publicly, but I do feel that we also need to cultivate this inner beast, not this crazy mad energy and to be unleashed, but to be cultivated and channeled properly. And as I say, not just appropriate aggression if we find ourselves in a situation that is life-threatening, but also think of the beast as desire and imagination. These are also things that we need to live. Well, thanks very much. I appreciate your time, and I will see you again soon.